The dust of the high plains was a fine, pale powder, settling on the warped boards of the land office and coating the dry tongues of the few souls gathered to watch. The air shimmered with a heat that promised no rain. Inside the stifling room, the mood was cold. Mai stood before the desk, her hand trembling. The man beside her, Horace Barlow, was rumored to be 40, or perhaps 50. He was a man of property, a widower twice over, with a ranch that spread across 3 counties and a silence that was heavier than any shout. His thumb pressed into the back of her hand, a hard, possessive gesture as the land agent rushed through the English words she barely understood. She was 18. A world away from the green hills of her homeland, sold by her father to this coarse American to cover a debt that had shamed their family name in this new country. This signing was the only thing that would save him. This, and the heavy purse Barlow had delivered to the Chinatown merchant 2 nights before. "Do you take this man?" the agent grunted, not looking at her. She felt the pressure of Barlow's gaze, hot and heavy as the drought-stricken air. She smelled the whiskey on his breath, a sour note beneath the sweat and dust. She wanted to choke. She wanted to run, but she remembered her father's desperate, pleading eyes. The words were a whisper, a language not her own, stolen by the dry air. "I do." It was enough. Barlow's grip tightened, bruising her fingers as he slid a thick gold band onto her hand. It was too large. It felt like a shackle. The walk to Barlow's ranch house, which sat on the edge of the parched town, was a blur. He made her walk beside him, his hand clamped on her upper arm. The red silk dress she wore, her only finery, was already stained with the pale orange dust. Townsfolk watched from their porches, their faces blank, offering no comfort. She was property now, moving from one owner to the next. The house was large, dark, and smelled of stale tobacco and old grief. A lone servant girl, eyes downcast, scurried away as they entered. Upstairs, Barlow grunted, shoving her toward the staircase. She climbed, each step a hammer blow against her heart. He called it the bridal suite, the room where his other wives had slept. It was lit by a single candle, casting long, monstrous shadows. The room was clean, but stark, a heavy bed frame, a wash basin, a tall wardrobe. Barlow followed her in and shut the door. The sound of the lock clicking into place made her flinch. He walked to the wash basin, poured a glass of whiskey from a decanter, and drank it in one swallow. He poured another. Mai stood by the door, her hands clutched so tightly her nails bit into her palms. She knew her duty, but her body was rigid with a terror that went beyond mere maidenly nerves. This was the cold, hard premonition of violation. Barlow turned, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. His eyes raked over her. "Take it off." Her fingers, numb and clumsy, fumbled with the intricate silk knots on her dress. "Slow," he growled, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I want to watch." She turned her back to him, a small, useless gesture of modesty. As she worked the knots, her eye scanned the room, desperate. Then she saw it. Hanging from a peg on the wall was a thick leather belt. It was not for holding up trousers. It was heavy, dark, and oiled, coiled like a snake in the dim light. Her breath hitched. Her gaze darted to the nightstand beside the bed. The drawer was slightly open. Something inside glinted. Metal. She nudged the drawer with her hip. A pair of metal handcuffs lay inside. A cold, sharp scream tried to claw its way up her throat, but she swallowed it down. This was not a bridal suite. This was a slaughterhouse. The belt, the metal, the memory of his other wives, both dead, both young. "I said, take it off," Barlow repeated, his voice dropping as he stood. Fear, raw and absolute, flooded her system, drowning out duty, drowning out everything but the primal urge to live. He reached for her. She bolted. She wrenched the door handle, forgetting the lock, then saw the window. It faced the back of the house, toward the dark, rising canyons. She grabbed the heavy water pitcher from the wash basin and threw it. It missed him, shattering against the wall, but it gave her a second. She grabbed a wooden chair and rammed it through the thin glass. "You bitch," he roared, lunging. She scrambled through the broken frame, not feeling the glass that tore at her dress and sliced her arms. She landed hard on the dusty earth of a dead flower bed. She heard him crashing around the room, roaring her name. She got to her feet and ran. Barefoot in her torn red dress, she ran from the house, past the silent barn, and into the scrub brush that marked the beginning of the wilderness. Behind her, she heard shouting, "Get the horses! Find her! She's mine!" Dogs began to bark. Mai plunged into the darkness, the red silk a beacon in the moonlight. She tore at the skirt, ripping the fabric away so she could move. She stumbled over rocks, her bare feet splitting open on the sharp shale. She could hear the horses now, the thud of hooves. She scrambled up a rocky incline and slipped, tumbling down into a dry wash. She lay there, gasping, tasting the salt of her own tears and the copper of her blood. The moon slid behind a cloud, plunging the canyon into darkness. The sounds of the chase seemed to move past her. She crawled into a thicket of mesquite, pulling her torn dress around her. She waited, every muscle screaming, until the sounds faded. Silence descended. She could not stay. They would find her at dawn. She forced herself to move, deeper into the wilderness, toward the high, cold ridges. The air grew thinner. She walked for hours, until she reached a high, windswept ridge and could climb no more. She stumbled, her ankle turning, and fell. The cold had seeped into her bones. She curled into a ball on the frozen ground, the shredded red silk a mockery of the life she'd fled. She closed her eyes. John hated towns. He kept to his ranch, a sprawling, isolated spread high in the foothills, coming down only when necessary to trade for salt, coffee, and cartridges. He was tracking a stray steer high on the ridges when his horse, a steady gelding named Quiet, stopped, his ears pricked forward. "What is it, boy?" John whispered, his hand on the rifle in its scabbard. Then he saw it. A patch of red crumpled against the dark earth, looking like a discarded blanket. He swung down from the saddle and approached slowly. It was a woman. She was lying on her side, half-curled, her dark hair aspill against the red fabric. Her feet were bare, caked in dried blood. This was trouble. The kind of trouble that got a man hanged. A foreign woman, alone on a mountain, looking like this. He should ride past. He had spent years learning to avoid society, and this was society at its worst, crawling up his mountain to die. He took a step back. The woman let out a low, broken moan. He swore, loud and sharp. He could not leave her. He knelt beside her. He touched her neck. The skin was ice cold, but there was a pulse, faint and thready. Her face was bruised, her lips blue. He slid his arms under her and lifted. She was light as a bundle of dry sticks. He settled her across his lap in the saddle, her head lolling against his chest. Beneath the cold skin, a fever was raging. He urged Quiet back to his ranch house, a one-room cabin built of solid pine, tight against a rock face. He kicked the door open and carried her inside, laying her gently on the narrow cot. He got a fire going in the stone fireplace and lit an oil lamp. In the flickering light, he got his first good look at her. She was young, her face covered in dirt and streaked with dried tears. Her hands were torn up, her feet a bloody mess. He warmed water and tore a strip from a clean shirt. As the warm water touched her skin, she began to shiver violently. Her eyes fluttered open, wide, dark, and full of terror. "No," she whispered in broken English. "Please, don't." "You're safe," John said gruffly. "Just cleaning you up." She thrashed, trying to pull away. "Belt, he's coming." John frowned, putting a hand on her shoulder. "There's no one here." "Just me." Her eyes finally landed on his face. The terror receded, replaced by a profound, fever-bright confusion. She looked at the rough-hewn beams of the ceiling, at the fire, and then back at him. "Where?" "My ranch." "High country," he said. Now hold still. He finished cleaning and salving her feet, then wrapped them in clean rags. He tended the gashes on her arms. He held a cup of lukewarm water to her lips, and she took 2 small sips before her eyes closed again. He took his heaviest wool blanket and laid it over her. He sat in the cabin's only other chair and began cleaning his rifle. He did not sleep. He watched her, and he watched the fire. My woke to the smell of coffee and wood smoke. Her body ached. Her feet were on fire. She was in a small, dark room, buried under heavy blankets. A man sat at a small table, his back to her, sharpening a knife. The memories came back in a rush, the signing, the belt, the window, the chase, the cold. The man turned. He was not Barlow. He was tall, with broad shoulders that filled out his flannel shirt. His hair was dark and long, tied back at the nape of his neck. He had a rough, wild beard. His face was all harsh angles, weathered by wind and sun. He looked at her, his eyes a pale, clear grey. They held no welcome, they just looked. "You're awake," he said. His voice was low and rough, like stones rubbing together. I shrank back. "Who? Where am I?" "Name's John. This is my place." "You're on Bear Ridge," he gestured to a tin mug of broth on the hearth. "Drink that. You've been out for 2 days. Fever's mostly broke. Trapped." The word echoed in her mind. She had run from one trap only to land in another. She looked at him, truly looked at him. He was big, stronger than Barlow, and they were alone. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling. He went back to his knife, the rhythmic sheeing of stone on steel filling the cabin. "Right now, I want this blade sharp enough to skin a rabbit. After that, I'll likely want to eat the rabbit." His answer confused her. He didn't sound angry or lecherous. He just sounded practical. "You found me," she said. "Near froze. Lucky for you." She touched the collar of her ruined dress. It was still on her. He understood. "Cleaned your feet and hands," he said, not looking up. "Glass in your arms. Nothing else. A man doesn't take advantage of a half-dead woman." She let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. He was gruff, but his quiet distance was a balm after the hot, demanding presence of Barlow. For days, they existed in that cabin. The world shrank to those 4 walls. He fed her broth and stew. He rebandaged her feet every morning, his touch firm and impersonal. He never asked her name, where she came from, or who was chasing her. He slept on the floor by the fire, his back to her, his rifle always within reach. He was a presence, but not a threat. As her strength returned, Mai began to claim a small space in the cabin. She swept the floor. She washed his few dishes. She found a small bag of rice and cooked it with some dried herbs she found. When John came in, the cabin smelled of more than just wood smoke. He stopped, sniffing the air. He saw the bowl on the table. He took a bite, chewing slowly. He looked at her. It's good she felt a flush of pleasure all out of proportion to the compliment. One night, as she stirred a thin stew, he broke the quiet. "Soon as the pass is clear, I'll ride you back to town." The spoon clattered from her fingers. Town. Back. She saw Barlow's house. She saw the coiled belt. No, the word was a choked whisper. John stopped his work. "No," she said, louder. "I won't go back. You can't make me." He stood up slowly. "You're from town. You can't stay here. This is no place for you. I'm not a man who keeps women." The panic was a living thing in her throat. She had to make him understand. "He'll kill me," she whispered. John frowned. "Who?" "Barlow. Horace Barlow." The name felt like ash in her mouth. "He is my husband." The lie came easily, a shield. A runaway wife was a criminal. A man harboring one was too. He is cruel. He beat me. That night, he tried. I ran. If you take me back, he will find me. Please, the terror in her eyes was real, and it was that terror he seemed to believe. John watched her. He knew the name Horace Barlow. Everyone in the territory knew it. A man who owned half the valley and had a reputation for breaking things, horses, men, and, it was rumored, his first 2 wives. He looked at her, this small, desperate thing in his oversized shirt. He turned back to his rifle. Barlow, he said, the name a hard rock in the air. I know the name. He didn't call her a liar. He just gave one sharp nod. Eat your stew. It was a truce. He would not take her back. Not yet. The lie and his silent acceptance of it changed the air in the cabin. They were no longer rescuer and victim. They were 2 people in a box. They began to talk, not about the past, but about small, safe things. He taught her the English names for the birds. She taught him a few words in her own tongue. She watched his hands, large, calloused, but surprisingly gentle as he mended a leather harness. One night, the cabin was thick with steam from a bucket of snowmelt he'd heated for a bath. He had given her the cabin, waiting outside in the freezing cold while she washed. Now it was his turn. She was on the cot, pretending to be asleep. She watched through her eyelashes as the firelight played over his scarred back. He moved to the basin on the table, sluicing water over his head and neck. He braced his hands on the edge of the table, his head bowed. She thought he was done, but when he looked up, he was staring at her. It was not a look of lust, not like Barlow. It was something deeper, sharper. It was a look of profound, aching loneliness. He saw her eyes were open and turned away instantly, his shoulders rigid. She did not look away. He revealed his own past one evening, the words pulled from him as if from a deep wound. Years ago, back in Texas, he began, his voice rough. A rich man's wife, she was lonely. Her husband found us talking. Said I touched her. Said I forced her. He spat the words out like poison. I never laid a hand on her. But I was poor. He was rich. The judge called me a danger to women. Branded me. He pushed up his sleeve, revealing the faint, ugly scar of a brand on his forearm. Spent 3 years on a prison farm for a lie. When I got out, I swore, he whispered, his voice cracking, I swore I'd never touch a woman again. Not unless she begged me. So clear that no one, no God, could ever twist it into a lie. The silence in the cabin was absolute. Evelyn looked at this quiet, gentle man who had saved her, this man brutalized by the same world that had sold her. She stood and walked toward him. He tensed, a caged animal. She stopped just out of his reach. You are a very large man, she whispered, her English clumsy, the words tumbling out raw and unfiltered. He flinched. Don't, he said, his voice choked. You don't know what you're saying. I know you are not him, she said, her voice gaining a desperate strength. I know you are gentle. Gentle. He let out a bitter, broken laugh. She stepped closer, placing her trembling hand on his chest. She could feel his heart hammering like a trapped bird. She looked up, meeting his anguished eyes. Then let me beg. He was frozen, his hands balled into fists at his sides. He whispered, and her name sounded like a man breaking. You said, clear, she whispered. She took his fisted hand and slowly uncurled his fingers, placing his palm flat against her cheek. The contact was a thunderclap. He hissed, his entire body going rigid. Is this clear? God help me, he breathed. He didn't kiss her. He didn't grab her. He let her lead him to the cot. She sat, pulling him down beside her. He guided her back against the rough wool blankets, hovering over her, his weight braced on his elbows, his body a shield against the world. If I hurt you, he choked out, you scream. You hit me. You understand. I am not afraid of you, John. His first kiss was on her forehead, a long, reverent press. When his lips finally found hers, it was tentative, a question. She answered by parting her lips. It was clumsy and desperate and achingly tender. It was the first true thing that had ever happened to her. As he moved over her, a sudden awareness of his size, his sheer power, made her gasp. She whispered, her voice trembling with a feeling that was not fear, but awe, "You are bigger than I thought." He froze, his face a mask of panic. "I'm hurting you." "No," she whispered, her hands finding his face, her thumbs stroking his rough cheeks. "No. It is good." Their union was an unmaking, an avalanche of sensation. It was an exorcism of 18 years of being small and silent and powerless. In his arms, in his terrifying, gentle care, she was being unbroken. Their fragile peace was shattered a week later. John rode in hard, his face a mask of cold fury. "Pack," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. I went low, toward the valley. Men are asking questions. Asking about a foreign girl who ran from her wedding in a red dress. Barlow's offering a reward. I felt the blood drain from her face. The lie crumbled. "He is not my husband," she whispered. John stopped, his hands full of cartridges. He did not look surprised. He just looked weary. "Didn't figure he was." "That was my wedding day," she sobbed. "My father, he sold me. Horace Barlow is my legal husband." The confession hung in the air. With a low, animalistic roar, John swept his arm across the table, sending everything crashing to the floor. He hit the solid log wall with his fist. "A husband," he bit out. "Do you know what this means, my? You're his property. That's what the law says. They won't call what I did rescue. They'll call it kidnapping. They will hang me, my. And they will give you right back to him." "I will go," she cried. "I won't let them hurt you." He crossed the room in a single stride, grabbing her by the shoulders. His grip was hard, desperate. "You will do no such thing. You are not his face was a mask of terrible, protective fury. Let them try. We run. North, into the territories. It's the only chance we have." The ambush came 2 days later, in a shallow arroyo. It was a trap. "Barlow sends his regards," a voice boomed from the ridge. 3 men. "Stay with the horse," John roared, sliding from the saddle. He was not a man, he was a force. He fired, pinning the men on the ridge. A third man charged from the pass ahead. John met him, using his rifle as a club, knocking the man from his saddle. The man came up with a knife. The fight was a brutal, bloody flurry of steel that was over in a second. A shot rang out from the ridge. John cried out, a sharp, pained sound, stumbling as he grabbed his shoulder. The 2 men on the ridge were taking aim. Evelyn saw it all. The preacher's daughter, the bartered bride, was gone. She grabbed the rifle from the man John had felled. She remembered his words, "Brace the stock. Breathe out. Squeeze." The rifle exploded, the kick a brutal shove. The shot was wild, but it screamed off the rock wall, showering the men with stone chips. They cried out, ducking in confusion. "Get on the horse," John roared. He scrambled into the saddle and hauled me up in front of him. They galloped hard as 2 more shots kicked up the dust behind them. They rode until the horse was stumbling and John collapsed from the saddle, a ragged, ugly hole in his shoulder. "Run, my," he panted, his face pale. "Take the horse, go." "Shut up," she said, her voice a fierce, trembling sob. "You are not dying here." She ripped his shirt open. She had seen his small kit in the saddlebags, a flask of whiskey, a needle, thread. She poured whiskey over the wound. He roared. She threaded the needle with shaking hands. "Stay awake. You are not leaving me. I will not be alone again." She stitched him up, a crude, terrible job. He writhed in agony. So stupid, he slurred in delirium. Branded, Just trouble. She leaned down, her bloody hands framing his face. You are not trouble, she whispered fiercely. You are my home. She kissed him, a hard, desperate kiss. You are worthy. I will carry the worth for both of us until you believe it. They found refuge on his own isolated ranch. It took a week for his fever to break. When he woke, his eyes clear, the first thing he saw was Maya asleep in a chair by his bed. He reached out and touched her hair. You stayed, he whispered. I told you, she whispered back. I am saving you. But Barlow was not a man to give up. He and 4 men rode onto the ranch a month later, a warrant in his hand. There was nowhere to run. This ends now, Barlow snarled, waving the paper. The law is on my side. She is my property. She is my wife, John said, stepping in front of my. His rifle was in his hand, his shoulder still stiff but his eyes steady. The fight was short and brutal. It was not a battle of honor, it was an extermination. John moved with the deadly efficiency of a survivor. Shots echoed in the clear morning air. When the dust settled, Barlow lay in the dirt of the yard, his warrant fluttering beside him. John stood over him, breathing heavily, the smoking rifle in his hand. He turned to Mai, his face grim, his eyes full of the terrible knowledge of what he had done. He was a killer. The brand on his arm suddenly felt hot and fresh. Mai walked to him, past the bodies of the men who had come to claim her. She did not look at them. She looked only at John. She took the heavy rifle from his hands and set it aside. She took his face in her hands, her thumbs wiping away the grime and powder burns. You're free, he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. The judge, the law, there will be questions. But you can say I forced you. You can be safe. A laugh bubbled up in her chest. A full, unashamed, glorious laugh. You fool, she whispered, her lips finding his. You beautiful, noble fool, she pulled back, her eyes blazing into his. I was never his. I was never my father's. She kissed him again, a long, deep, possessive kiss. I have only ever belonged to you. They stood on the porch of the small cabin they had just defended with blood and fire. The world was quiet again. The land stretched out before them, vast and empty and full of promise. It was their own. He wrapped his arms around her, one scarred, one whole, and held her as if he were the one drowning and she was the only solid thing in the world. We're not alone in the dark anymore, he said, his voice a rough whisper against her hair. Love walks with us now.